Okay, so here I am, here to belatedly wrap up all the books I read in 2025. Yeah, I know my hair looks like a mess, but whatever. It's just gonna look like that until I get it cut. So anyway, yeah. So in October, I think that's where I left off. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's where I left off. Okay, so October, Autograph Man. I read Zadie Smith. Um, I don't know if I don't know why. I'll just give a quick gist of my. I just felt like I like her stuff for the most part. Like I, I read White Teeth. I keep wanting to say With Teeth, which is I think a Nine Inch Nails album. I keep mixing it up, but I liked that book. I liked her first debut novel. I liked um, the ones that she could like. There's like a more of a something of essays she had. I can't remember, but it was like different thoughts and musings and stuff about. I think around the time that COVID hit, so that was pretty insightful. And but for some reason, Autograph Man was like trying too hard to be. It was like the main character. I think was like not very all that likable. Like he's just like a stoner kind of guy, just like a little bit of a stoner kind of thing. I think it was like Alexis Tam something. Was the character's name? But yeah, I just didn't. For some reason, I just did not. The characters and everything that was, you like, everything was had a lot of potential to be very interesting. Once it was like, but at the end of the day, I just like I didn't take away much. I didn't feel a lot of empathy for like this his love of celebrities and like, kind of celebrity worship and all this stuff, and I just felt like kind of like not like it didn't leave a good taste in my mouth for like the character and any of the characters in it, or a lot, most of them. But anyway, that's just my take. So next I read Feed by MT Anderson. Pretty funny. um I think I did a review on that, yeah. Life of Pi, Jan Martel. Ending Things by Kingsley Amis. I think that's the only thing I've ever read by him. That's the first thing and only thing so far. But yeah, I'll let you guys know what I think about it. I think that was it 70s books. He has a son named Martin Amis, who's also a writer. So kind of interesting. Um, The Slave Dancer by Paula Fox. I heard various references about um, Paula Fox. I think Desperate Characters is another one I haven't read yet. I heard recommended. The Cherry Orchard by Anton Chekhov. I've heard many people, actors and stuff, people in Hollywood and the world around, talking about adapting that play for the stage in the modern era too. So like it has a lot of, it's ripe for the kind of drama and intrigue and suspense that you know Chekhov is able to. Oh, I was already hydrated. Oh, anyway, all right. So after that, I read Ice by Anna Kavan. I'm definitely as bleak as that was. Um, I still want to like really go through more of her works too. And obviously that was her pen name, the British author. The Enchiridion or the Enchiridion. I keep wanting to say Enchiridion, but it's Enchiridion. I think Saint Augustine of Hippo. Although I think there's another one by one of the, it might have been not Aristotle, but I think one of the Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, wrote something to that effect. The Kybalion by various authors, really really interesting. Um, but it's dating back and it's kind of legendary to attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice greatest Hermes. And yeah, so there's no way of like exactly saying like back in Hermetic Thoth, Egypt, I think is how far it dates back. So yeah, but yeah, really interesting stuff. Um, some of it went over my head, but anyway, very spiritual kind of stuff. about like order in the world, and like the balances of stuff. Premonition by Benito Yoshimoto. It's my first by hers after hearing it recommended by different people. Um, Not that book in particular, just the author Benito Yoshimoto. And that's not her. I think that's her real name, but I think Banana was like a pen. Her the first name is a pen name, so I think it's something different than that. But yeah, she's born in the '70s. I think I'd like to review that one time. Very interesting kind of uh, Japanese author. She's like weaving together like a really interesting tale about this a brother and a sister that and the sister has kind of these what's the word instincts of a psychic. She has like a kind of is able to kind of tell, not telekinetically or anything like that, but kind of she's able to kind of like tell the future. She's able to have kind of a sixth sense of the future, and um, Kafka Americana by Carter Schultz and Jonathan Lethem. I'd like to I have Motherless Brooklyn by him on my list to read, and yeah, Kafka Americana is just like I got it a while back, and for some reason it took me this long to read. It's not too long. It's like maybe that thick, and it's just a bunch of oscillating short stories between the two authors that are in the style of Kafka. I'm trying to refrain from using Kafkaesque because I don't like using that term too much, even when describing Kafka, because I don't know. But it's usually used when people are talking about things that are Orwellian and not really Kafkaesque. But anyway, so yeah, there's one starts off with elderly. I think it's called Blumfeld, the elderly bachelor. I think is it's just basically a retelling of one of Kafka's own stories, but in a modern context. So you have like a lot of um, maybe kind of domestic kind of different disputes and all these different kind of interesting things. I thought that probably the most interesting one on that was the letters of the Bat Cave, kind of the letters of something K. I think it was like obviously um, alluding to the kind of the Joseph K. kind of character that Kafka wrote in the trial, but in the constant kind of apostrophe or the abbreviated names you have the identity of the characters are always like obfuscated and kind of mystery, and the way that uh, I think Lethem wrote this one, but it's like the he was able to capture that the kind of humor of that through the lens of kind of a of Batman, you know. So like it was like all these different kind of scribblings uh of like all these different things, and him in the Batcave, you know, kind of with a Joker kind of out on his tail, and it's like the I think the way he described it was like he quoted Kafka at one time, where it's like a bird is, and you know, the bird is in when in search of its cage. He kind of put that through a he I think he said like a bat. He said like something to the effect of like a bat when it goes in search of its cave. So that was kind of a funny switch up. Um, but again, some of that, you know, a lot of that might be lost on you if you don't know, like, um, if you're not acquainted with Kafka already. So, but yeah, I'd like to review that for a different day. Um, so after that, I read What Gandhi Says by Norman Finkelstein, popularly known as Norm Finkelstein. I don't know too much about him aside from kind of the memes that have been um, cycled around by him. But I think the main thing is that he's a historian. I think mainly he is a scholar of history, and he's pretty well educated in that. So I just want to kind of get a taste of what it was. It wasn't too long. Just kind of what Gandhi's all the kind of some of them pretty conflicting at times, like his stance on nonviolence, and then his other he had kind of younger, more radical outlook on the world, and they kind of subjugated British occupied um, India too. Like when he was talking about how the lengths you should go to. Obviously, this is I'm not going to be able to quote it from memory, but him saying kind of prescribing kind of little bit kind of stuff that didn't gel as neatly with his as what you might think is like very strong ethical non-violence, kind of very passive. I was going to say passive aggressive, but that's not Gandhi at all. Like it is, I don't think there was any aggression, especially you have this picture kind of the doting kind of, um, like refusing to, fasting for like days on end and um, at spiritual warfare and trying to figure out kind of the dark night of the soul and all that. But I think that picture of Gandhi was like there's other images of him too, where it's like some of him is more like pretty radical, like a more radical version, I think. Um, so the last thing in October I read was The Red World of Polaris, which is a story collection by Clark Ashton Smith, another writer I never actually read before until then. Um, and he's more kind of sci-fi speculative fiction genre, and yeah, really interesting kind of descriptive imagery. Really smart guy too. I'm not sure if I ever review this. Some of these days, yeah. Um, Revenge of the Lawn. Okay, so in November I read Revenge of the Lawn and Other Stories by Richard Bradigan. For some reason, I was expecting to walk away from this loving it. But I'm like, I don't know. I love Richard Bradigan for the most part. Even if he was slightly problematic. Excuse me. Slightly problematic when it came to his view of women, as people, the people in the introduction to that book kind of pointed out, that he wasn't a feminist by any stretch of the imagination, and one could chalk that up to kind of the time they lived in, and the 40s and 50s, and he was, I want to say, born in the early, maybe the, because he died in the 70s, I want to say, at the early 80s, I want to say, and he didn't make it past middle age. He had a strong depression too. He was like a um in a kind of in the similar kind of clinical kind of depression that he had with Hemingway too. Had this kind of thing where it ended with a um, awfully, I think, tragically, but but yeah, for some reason I don't know why these stories on that were a little bit too I don't know, like they would start out with something interesting and then suddenly would, and I know they're short stories, but like for some reason they left me wanting a little bit, like kind of going into it, like him painting a picture of like an interesting kind of the, whether it's like the Pacific Northwest and the beauty and all the rich abundant kind of uh natural kind of I don't know, scenic kind of beauty out there, which is ripe with it. um but then he would, like, I don't know, kind of be hinting at something like really personal to him that he couldn't really. I'm just wondering like what he's trying to get at. And this is after reading like three or four of his stuff already. The Confederate General from the Big Sur I really liked. Obviously, his most famous one, Watermelon Sugar. Obviously put spawned up Harry Styles song, so the opposite was pretty famous. And I've heard other singers do like mention him, like band members of bands I like too. I think that's where I heard of him a few years ago. Um, so yeah, and obviously, trout fishing in America is great as well. But for some reason, yeah, those short stories, I think some of them weren't really good. Really well crafted, cobbled together. You and then the essence of after that, I read Neuromancer by William Gibson. I'm gonna have to do something on that because I kind of walked into that also not really. I don't know, just I don't want to get too negative here, but it was just like really depressing, kind of, like Case, the main character, and like a lot of that, I know that J.D. Ballard kind of has a little similar kind of thing of, going into speculative fiction, this idea of technology, and I'm going to be massively inarticulate here because I can't really remember much, or I can't really talk much or offer much about what most of these kind of sci-fi, what's the word, cyberpunk, because cyberpunk as a genre I'm not really too keen on. I don't know, I just think I think the main reason I thought about this earlier, or maybe yesterday, um I might have wrote it down even because I was like, in a kind of an essay kind of opinion form, kind of an op-ed form, but then maybe the reason I don't really uh vie well a lot with science fiction, or some forms at least, is because, and not even just the popular form, but even like the kind of the kind of like the more thankful the more thankless kind of versions of it, of stuff like, um, I don't know off the top of my head. Like Philip K. Dick, I love Philip K. Dick. But he wouldn't necessarily be considered science fiction too, like strictly speaking, at least. But yeah, I think the reason why, going back to what I was saying, I don't like a lot of speculative fiction and stuff is because it's depicting a world that's so that this world is depressing enough as it is, that I don't know if I want to really disappear and like, oh well, this world and into this depressing world, bleak and uh, morbid, with like death happening, like consumerism height brought to its like complete logical conclusion, and excess and everything is just like accelerated to its absolute you know um, decadence, is because the world is kind of like already shitty enough as it is, and I kind of, and I don't want to, I don't know, it's just like, I mean, in some ways maybe the world, it's kind of um not the bias, it's like a argument kind of it's a fallacy, a logical fallacy. See how massively inarticulate I can't even get a sentence out. I'm so stupid, man. um I'm not naturally gifted at this. I am first and foremost. I said this a million times. Don't I never do a YouTube channel. Don't do this because I can't talk for the life of me. I have no charisma about this stuff at all. I can maybe woo you guys with maybe music, stuff like that, or story or crafted stuff behind the scenes. Um, which is why I'm much better writer than I am talking about writing, because I love literature too. But this is why the single greatest reason why I did this. But when it comes to actually getting a word out or a sentence out, it's like, you know, oh, I have to take a, I have to, I don't know, like it's just like the words like don't come to me at all. I have to like think about it for like a million years just to get a word across. Meditation doesn't help either because I literally meditated like not too long ago. So, um, I mean, it's not like a magic lantern. Um, but yeah, So that's why I was talking to you. So the world is it's just kind of shitty enough as it is, and I don't want to be reminded about that. Although that's kind of a like a, oh, the world's like, oh, it's so crappy now, as as far as Regency is. There's a bit of like um a fallacy there, because it's like, well, maybe the same you could say the same thing about all these different ages and epochs throughout history, and apply that kind of same logic or lack thereof of, oh well, maybe there's not I don't know, there's not, you know it seems like the end of the world is coming every single like side, whether it's like Soviet Russia and the Cold War, and um or whether it's today with ice Minneapolis and all that crap, and the tensions are just ever rising forever and ever. But yeah, um after that I read The Essence of Chan, I'm sorry, Chan, by Guo Ga. Sorry if I butcher that name, because it is a I'm not sure if that's Japanese name. Guo, it's Guo Ga, but I think it's like it's synthesizing different lessons and stuff of Chen. I think it's the um kind of a Japanese kind of, or Sino-Japanese kind of, no, wait, it might be Chinese, I think. Um, all these the kind of spiritual practices and that monks have kind of brought down and reserved, whether orally or through tradition of writing it, or preserving it on manuscripts and whatnot. Very interesting. I don't know. I'm trying to, when I get the itch to learn a little bit about a new religion, kind of might as well take advantage of the accessibility of books and on their physical forms or audible forms. Um, After that was Speak Memory by Vladimir Nabokov. Yeah, interesting Obviously, I'm going to have to do a different thing on this, but yeah, very flowery, florid kind of writer. Stylistic, very um like that, the verbiage kind of too, like that idea of combining kind of a synthetic kind of compendium of different schools of thought, that he has. He's like, the entomology of all his love of um, the um, insects, and following butterflies, and I don't know if I have much more to say about that right now. I'm gonna jinx myself, but anyway. After that was Three Drops of Blood, a story collection by Sadegh Hidayat, or Hidayat. I'm not sure if the T is silent on that. Persian names get tricky. Yeah, obviously I love this one. It's really chilling stuff, especially near the end of that, on the short story Buried Alive. I'm gonna have to do like a separate kind of thing on this, because people definitely did a lot better, would have done a lot better job than I could ever dream of analyzing just the lengths of, or the depths of different semiotic kind of Persian. It's not just modern in a sense that it's like, oh, it's Kafkaesque. It is definitely very, very Kafka. Like Kafka, I was trying to. It's not just that, but it's not just Poe either. Like Edgar Allan Poe's brought up to comparison of, especially in those the Blind Owl too, with like how the narrator is very unreliable. You get and then towards the end of it, you're slowly peeling away the all the layers of suspense, and until you finally realize that he's at fault. This pen case illustrator who's gone insane, and took somebody's life. Spoiler alert. Anyway, but yeah, the that revelation was like really hit me like a ton of bricks, and as does most of the things off of that too. So yeah, he's definitely a favorite of mine. Up there with like Clarice the Spectre, and oh, look who's next. Princess Borba by Machado de Assis. Yeah, I thought this was really funny. This was one of those books I'm gonna honestly say that was funny, adoring. I did a review of it because I loved it so much, and I felt like it was still fresh in my mind, so I did. Um, the plot wasn't super hard to follow. Definitely in the realist kind of thing. He had a realist trilogy, I think. But yeah, he's capable of crafting characters that are a little bit quixotic, kind of lovable fools in a way, Um, yeah. So after that, Sasha's journey to her first confession. Okay, so you're gonna see some of these, like once in a blue moon, you're gonna see some of these things. I thought it was by Ivan Goncharov, but I didn't double check before I got it. It was like a really quick, it's basically a short story, but I don't know. It's hard to, I said this before, but it's hard to actually record certain things, because sometimes you'll have books that, well, maybe I read basically a short story or novella, and it maybe took like an hour and a half, 2 hours to read or something. But then again, there's some books on there that are pretty heavy tomes, like 700, 800, sometimes over 1,000. Like I'm reading Man Without Qualities right now. I'm like 300 pages, surprisingly, and I'm not sure how I kept up that pace, but yeah, Man Without Qualities by Robert Musil, and yeah, that's like 11 to 1,200 pages, without the footnotes, like infinite jest, so it's tricky trying to, no two books are like whatsoever, some of them, some short stories like stick with you, like or Kafka or Sadegh Hidayat for that matter, or uh, short Flannery O'Connor too, are capable of like communicating an awful lot of sensitive, thematic, heavy information in a very short um, point thing. Anyway, the okay, you can see why I postpone all these videos too. Where there's like sometimes 2 weeks and 3 weeks, because like I'm just dreading sometimes these videos. I wish this was fun for me. I wish I was out. Wish this was like oh, I could just sit down and just kind of shoot the shit with people or talk to books about, or pretend like I'm shooting the shit with you. Sometimes I am kind of doing it like now, but for the most part, it's like you can see it in my face. Like I'm just like not liking it for the I'm just like, oh man. Anyway, Sasha's okay. So that book was just like a Christian kind of propaganda kind of thing. I don't know why I don't know why I fell for that. I thought it was something else. Sometimes I'll see a book where and I'll be like, whoa, and then I'll get it without realizing that, and then I'll like realize too late that it's like okay. But I think it was just short enough to kind of plow through, and I was like, okay, well, I thought Goncharov because Goncharov wrote really funny novel called Obamov, um, about a guy who cannot leave his bed or his room for that matter. So I thought that was going to be another kind of I thought I just want to get more of his stuff, but I guess I'm gonna have to look harder this time. So um, the Burning Secret by Stefan Zweig. Really interesting. I think there's a movie about that too. Um, I was gonna watch originally. So that's obviously Stefan Zweig, wrote the chess story. Also known as I think it's a different name. It's something I think it was called the game. I think something the Royal Game. I think the other names titles. Obviously one of my favorite short stories too. Um, but yeah, The Burning Secret was like more of a novella, I think, maybe novel length. Um, yeah, it was a I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a review on this, but obviously it was about something. I'm just gonna leave it at that because I don't wanna get into it. I did like it. I enjoyed it. Yeah, the suspense it built up a kind of a classic kind of dramatic kind of suspense. After that, it was Rip Rap and Other Mountain Poems by Gary Snyder. I knew about him through Jack Kerouac. He obviously needs no introduction, but he mentions Gary Snyder through the character of Zaffy in Dharma Bums. So that's this Zen kind of uh, uh, scholar, I guess, of Zen Buddhism, mixed with a poet, mixed with a writer, mixed with a whoever knows who had it's kind of a Renaissance guy in that sense. But yeah, I think it was like my second thing of poems I read about him. And yeah, I like his style, kind of reminiscent of beat mixed with like maybe the poetry of like William Carlos Williams. He mixes some classical kind of stuff in there too. Anyway, the poll, I'm sorry, by J.M. Coetzee. I love this one too. I don't know why I didn't do a review on this. This is just I don't know. J.M. Coetzee was the first thing. This is the first thing I read by him. I heard a lot of good things by him. A South African novelist. And yeah, really just a tender a love story through the eyes of an opera singer, middle aged, who is ends up beginning a very almost like a clumsy kind of thing where she doesn't like the pole at first. He's a pianist, obviously, um, and believe it or not, there's like no reminiscence to like the movie, The Pianist by which is about a Polish pianist as well, concert pianist as well. Um, Obviously based off a real story, but the Roman Polanski movie that was just like pretty decent, but kind of I saw no similarities. But I think this was much more about had nothing to do with the war or anything like that. So, but this was just kind of a almost a story of unrequited love of this old 70 something year old Polish guy who's falling in love with a younger opera singer. So the age difference is like they both, he's able to kind of emphasize you know through her this lady's the exact thoughts and feelings, like how at first she's kind of repulsed by him, kind of this kind of skeletal guy that's very moody and kind of exacting with his music and career, and but also very gentlemanly, and he can be soft and very poetic, and he writes all these poetries, and that's kind of the a lot of the uh, suspense I think is lays at the mystery of like what after he's like sends these like love poems to her, honor to her, and they are trying to like unravel like what he's saying, and and in after he's passed on. I think there's like the brunt of the mystery is like them trying to translate all these the exact like the way he expressed himself, and that the way he did that, and then he did that through his music, and yeah, there's a lot of very dimensional kind of stuff to that. But anyway, so in December I read Joe Gould's Secret, Joseph Mitchell. I already reviewed that. I still got to watch the movie, so I'm trying to figure out where they stream it to. I don't know if it's definitely not. I think it's on definitely not on Amazon Prime, but some other. Maybe I'm gonna have to get the DVD or something. Anyway, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to do something on that too. Obviously, but the very the Clutter family murders. Obviously, I finally watched after hearing about it for years and seeing scenes from it and stuff. The Truman Capote, the Capote movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman as obviously Capote, and Catherine Keener as Harper Lee. So there's they're kind of their childhood friends meeting again for after a little while, to kind of help together, kind of journalistically, um, kind of look into this crime and see like what the motives for the murders were. So with I think was it Perry Smith and Ricardo Haycock or something. Um, I know this like kind of a lot of things. It's like, well, you should maybe not, you should know the names of the murder, or not the murders, or the family or the victims before you know the names of the cold-blooded killers. But hey, I think there's the reason is because like their names are repeated so often in the book too. That's like a good 14-hour read, I think, too. Um, but yeah, it was really depressing too. So, and yeah, but I didn't realize too that Catherine Keener and Philip Seymour Hoffman reprised kind of the were in Synecdoche, New York as well, which is my all-time favorite movie. Um, in so after that, I read The Marquis of Lumbra. I'm sorry, by Miguel G. Unamino, another author have taken to liking over the years. I read, I want to say it was something of a philosopher too, um, wrestling with the big questions like faith, and taking a leap of faith in kind of a Kierkegaard kind of fashion. But I think with Unamino, he wrote that Cain and Abel Sanchez um, short story collection, which is really great. Um, but I can't remember what his big kind of tackling when he was talking about nonfiction, his big nonfiction piece was called. Because I know I read it, but you know um, but after that was Two on a Tower by Thomas Hardy. I should have started with the Madness of Crowds. I think it's called one of his most famous ones, adapted into a movie. Or yeah, because for some reason I cannot get anything. The only takeaway was that it was two astronomy lovers who are both on kind of on this observation tower deck or something, looking at at their favorite constellations. That's all I took away, was that it was like a self-insertion kind of um I don't want to like you know um knock him too much for this, but it was just like Hardy seems to be. I thought he was kind of in the realist fashion too, like in a kind of, or maybe naturalist school. I'm not sure. Obviously I heard of him before, and I should have. I don't know. I thought my only takeaway is that this was too. It would be like you won't get it unless you're in on the joke of like astronomy or something. Like if you know, or if you're really well versed or versed enough in it. Um. Anyway, so Treasure Island but it's also something of a love story too. I think. Um. Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. After hearing about not, I don't know if I ever read that in school, but I just figured, I don't know, why the heck not. Um, so, The Man Who Had All the Luck by Arthur Miller. Um, he wrote The Crucible and The Death of a Salesman. Anyway, hold up. Sorry. Last exit to Brooklyn. I think I talked about how depressing this was and how I don't know if I ever want to read another Hubert Hubbard Jr. But yeah, that was exhausting read. It's like I would have been fine if it was like like balanced out or something. Like okay, where we have one story here, which is, and then we're gonna kind of go to something softer or something. I think that's something that what was The King in Yellow by Chambers. Chambers. He did that pretty in an interesting way of starting out really dark and slowly getting more optimistic through the progression. Um, and yeah, so on the natural history of deconstruction by W.G. Sebald, he was something of a philosopher, maybe, of history too. I think he was a German, but I think he lived in America. I think he emigrated after the war. It's part of what a lot of that book is about, is him um, kind of just getting to a little bit like Benedict Anderson talking about a little bit into the anthropology, kind of studying the not so much maybe not the cultural roots, but the like what kind of um this uh what brings about deconstruction, I guess, and like how it cycles around, and I guess that's kind of what the Nazis were kind of they're he was talking about concentration camps and all that, and yeah, which leads me to the periodic table by Primo Levi, and I would love to do a separate thing on this because I thought those are a set of really interesting, unique kind of short stories, all each devoted to each kind of thing of the periodic table. But obviously, because there's 200 something elements, but I think there's 48 chapters in that, so or 48 stories. So, but yeah, I'd like to get around and do a kind of a full fledged kind of thing for that. Aesop's Fables. Yeah, interesting kind of the how I never got to that just yet because after hearing about it, plenty of times, like the Fox and the Sour Grapes and all these different kind of fables. Some of those like really um self-evident kind of things that in here growing up a lot, brought down. I'm surprised how much that was preserved, considering just how long ago he lived. Don't ask me what when he was born because I clearly don't. Um, but anyway, a true story by Lucien Samasate. Again, a he was born something. He I kind of know a little bit more. So he's born like the 130s, I think. But yeah, he had a really interesting kind of first technical sci-fi stories out there um, that have kind of a picaresque kind of aspect to them, talking about kind of mythologized um, gods and goddesses, but using them to kind of like tell a story of like like going to the moon, like a trip to the moon. I think was the name of that other story by him. Um, After that, I read Urian's Voyage by Andre Gide. Very kind of Hermann Hesse in a way that he describes aspects of that tale and like how um, I'm gonna have to go more into that, but I'm gonna leave it at that. Mislines by George Bernard Shaw. Pretty funny, kind of humorist kind of um, play. I think the only other thing I read by him was Pygmalion. Pygmalion. Introduction to Metaphysics by Henri Bergson. See the French pronunciation. New Hampshire by Robert Frost is a collection of different poems by him. Again, another poet that I heard of a lot of, but never fully read or appreciated until now. Poetics by Aristotle. It just turned out technically to be a reread because I actually read that already because I was looking for something and I saw that I was like, oh well, this is out there available, and I was like, oh crap, I already read it. But it's worth a reread. I think not too long. Anyway, so I don't want to get too in the weeds on how many books I read, but I think it was something between 95 to like 98 books. I know it's not quite 100 because I totaled them up, tallied. And I don't think it was that many. But anyway, and I might as well just kind of give a hint what I'm reading so far. So I finished another roadside attraction. I started that in January because it was like a little bit thicker. Not too long. It was like maybe 300, 400 pages, I think. But yeah, Tom Robbins was recommended to me. It was I heard it was really funny, had a lot of but a kind of a good heart to it too. But I'm gonna have to do a separate kind of thing on that too. About the Bhagavad Gita by the Swami Nikalananda. I heard a lot about that too. Like one of those things like the Tibetan Book of the Dead that I hear about and cited, but never actually have had fully read. Um, the Secret of the Golden Flower is a kind of a Chinese. No, I think it's actually Japanese. Uh, you know, a religious kind of text and secret kind of thing. And Carl Jung actually adds and I think not Wilhelm Reich, something. Wilhelm, it might be Peter Wilhelm, I think, did a little an introduction or commentary on it, or Jung did the commentary, so Jung rather. Anyway, but that is all I have for now, and I'm a lot more tired than I thought I would be today. I don't know why. But yeah, it's pretty much all I have. And um, I think that's yeah. I'm gonna try to do that Siddhai Karayat thing sometime in the next whatever. So I'll let you know about that. And thanks for watching if you made it this far. And yeah, see you.